Morning, everyone. This is Sales Chatter, the only podcast out here that's helping logistics reps with the mission of trying to hit 10,000 sales reps to hit a million GP. I'm your co-host, Ryan Mohammed, the main man and CEO of RGTX Logistics Solutions. Dickinson, how you doing this morning, brother?
Good, my man. How about yourself? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm fired up. This week has been a little bit of a short week,
So
right?
am I.
It's always the short weeks that kind of fire up a little bit. So, yeah, let's get to it. Let's have some fun
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a little bit weird. Huh? That was a little bit weird. Carry on. Yeah, that's it looks like I'm having the internet issues today, even though I reset my modem already.
I'm not the internet guy today.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely the internet guy today. Jeff, we have had a great week in terms of
Yes.
like training. I've loved the conversations that we've been having, Scott and Dean, yesterday as well. Let's start. Let's have some fun. Let's give our takes on it, of training, right? And I know you're a big stickler, so we do have a 30-minute show today, so we can't go over. But give us training thoughts. When somebody says training, they're going training into logistics, they're going training into operations. What are your thoughts, brother?
That's a huge question. And I would say it from my point of view. And again, this is just my point of view. Everybody has their own ways, of course. But I think the best way to get more ingrained into the sales side of the business is that, especially when you're dealing with warehousing and DCs, mom and pops, whatever your niche is, to get more involved into the actual logistics operations side of the business, so that you have a better understanding. We spoke with Scott yesterday about that very thing when I asked Scott, hey, what do you think about your trainees that you have in a group, and during a tour, do a tour of a local warehouse or a DC, have them get involved and watch what's going on in that operations, and just kind of figure out, and again, it's so involved. The best thing that I can say to that is watch and see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and then ask those questions and take notes of the day, and then go back and say, hey, I noticed this, and hopefully you'll get answers from the traffic manager or logistics manager there. The thing is that every logistics manager, supply chain manager, traffic manager are always busy throughout the day. If they're not busy, something's wrong. I can tell you that
The
right
company's
now.
not moving.
Yeah, no, something's that's
If they're booking one load a day, you gotta run.
it's
You
just
gotta.
like no. So that would be the best thing to do, is actually get in the trenches and do that. And you know what? Don't be afraid to say, hey, can I load that truck? As long as it's okay with them, if you're not a certified forklift driver, you can't use the forklift or anything like that. There's liability issues and all that. But I think just getting yourself in there and watching is worth platinum. Seriously. I don't know. I mean, have you ever done that? Like been in there or seen it or done it?
Yeah, it's actually part of my sales pitch when I talk to new prospects is that, hey, I want to come and take a look at your operations. I want to get to know what you guys do, why you do it, get to know the dock workers. And that's the way that I've kind of operate. So I've changed my mindset in terms of, hey, I reach out to customers, get a quote, and then run a quote on them. It's like, no, that's not the way I do it. I want the customers for life that I've learned from you and Dan as well. So what I will do is that and I'm kind of trading a little bit of my secrets here, but it is what it is. When I reach out to a prospect, I do like offer a free cost analysis for them. So I'll take a look at their lane, see what their fits are, and then I'll offer to go to a warehouse. Obviously, if it's within reason, because if it's outside of Ontario, then we've got to kind of schedule that. I'm not really trying to take a vacation up there, but I go there and I figure out what they're doing, right? And Jeff, you know why I do that? The reason I do that is I don't know if you remember from like working in corporate. You remember when the big wig or like the big boss would come into the office, they would have that big lunch, and then he would be sitting with your boss in his office for the whole day, and then you just feel that like competitive, or you just feel that that sense of relief that, hey, we've got the big wigs that are actually coming down to see us. And I take that mindset that it's better to see things in person. I don't know. I don't think that you could do everything online or things like that. And as you're kind of saying, go see a driver, see what they do, see how long, and even time them, see how long it takes to load a truck, just so you can have all that data for yourself to understand that, hey, I can bring this value to you. And if not, then I can just go do that for somebody else. And it really comes down to the fact of like, do you want to make your calls a day, or do you want to make maybe 2 or 5 calls a week? But those calls will turn into big platinum gold nuggets for you.
And that's my point. I mean, for myself, I don't really need to go to the facility unless it's a monster size facility. I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah.
When I'm on the call and I'm speaking to somebody, and again, most of them are referrals. I don't really do much of that cold calling. I'll ask those pertinent questions that will drive a response. I'll listen, and then I'll say, okay, I have a very good idea that will lead me into the next question, because everything, I don't care what anybody says here, but everything starts within a warehouse and a DC. Yes, it comes from the ports, or if it's domestic, it'll come from a vendor, a manufacturer, a raw material manufacturer, and get into that warehouse. But that's where the down and dirty happens. It happens right then and there. It's not from the outside in, because if it's happening from the outside in, you've got lateness and stuff like that. Most of the time, it's that another warehouse held up another driver, and that's the reason why the driver didn't make his scheduled appointment time. And it's just a vicious circle. And it's the next one, and it's the next one. So it really boils down to operational inefficiencies. I've seen it a ton of times, and I'll put myself on a limb. I can almost guarantee that if I walked into any warehouse out there, I will find something. I will find something that they didn't look into. All I have to do is just sit there and just watch and understand and see the environment and what it looks like and what's happening. There's much more into it, but it all starts there. It really does. And I'm glad that you're doing that.
Yeah, and you know what? For me, the reason why I do it too is that like I work from home, so like I'm bored. Like it's just me and my 3 dogs. So any opportunity to get out of the house and see people and have that interaction. And the reason why I kind of said that, I laughed when you said like you'll investigate, you'll find anything, because like with the handlebars, it reminds me of like Sherlock Holmes, right? So you're the guy who will find you will find that issue. But, but
I'm good at it. I am. I'm good at it, and I do things a lot differently. And it's something that's in my blood. I mean, it really is. It's something in my blood that I've had, let's call it 40 years. Seriously, and I've seen so many evolutions in the logistics industry before 3PL was even out there, before cell phones were out there. I mean, I've seen from the worst to the best. I mean, and it's still improving, which is great. So the industry is moving in the right direction.
It really is. Yeah, it's not, and it's not just about like tech and stuff like that. It's just really being there, like having those conversations and being able to actually get to know customers or prospects on a human level, even other competitors, to get to know them on a human level. That's why we got all these podcasts and things like that. But I want to talk to you about training specifically for yourself. What kind of stuff do you kind of do? Because like I said, we've both been in the industry for a while. We know how to make a call. We know how to do these things, but what kind of things do you kind of do for yourself, whether it be like check LinkedIn or check other podcasts to kind of...
I do. I mean, it has a lot to it. I mean, one thing I do, and I got them right here, progressive railroading, supply chain brain, logistics management, inbound logistics. I could keep on pulling stuff out. I mean, I get this stuff every single day. I read it in the morning, and I like to keep myself up to date, my finger on the pulse, looking at the data, looking at that, freightways, looking at any kind of stuff that's going to give me information in order to push me forward, and then I'm going to take that information from our podcast, Speaking with Dean, or any other podcast that I'm on, or anything that I read out there as far as content and post from competitors or friends in the field. And I take that, I make my own decisions based upon what I'm gathering, and then I'll come out with something, all related, because you're pulling in so much different information from so many different things. It gives you that knowledge that you need, because everybody is facing different things in logistics. A lot of them have the same problems, but different verticals have different issues within themselves. So, it's good that's a great training. Read books, audio books, all that stuff. What's that?
To say like this, I think it's amazing that what you're doing working. But it's important that you're doing those things and actually going forward with it, because not a lot of people, like I haven't seen a magazine in a while, right? But Jeff, for you, when you take that knowledge and you talk to your customers about it, what's kind of the feedback that you get from your customers from sharing that knowledge with them?
Oh, wow. Or, hey, I know about that. And then, we start talking about something, and then another door opens up, and then it's like, boom, I walk right through that. There's a lot of different things that I can do. I mean, I'm not gonna, like Scott says, I'm not gonna give you all the secrets, but,
No.
there is a lot of different things. There's a lot of KPIs. There's a lot of things that you can do, but you got to learn that, man. That's how you develop value. Everybody has their different level of value, whatever it might be, that they can bring to the table and offer that. Some have more, some have less. But that's the thing, is that when it comes to training and you're on the sales side of the business, and I say it all the time, I'm not a sales guy, I'm a logistics guy, first and foremost. Okay. But I can sell logistics. The thing is that find your value out there, define what your value is, find what your niche is, what you're good at, what you like, and keep going down that path, man. Find your own individual path that you feel very comfortable in it, and then create it and build on that. And then before you know it, you'll be an SME, subject matter expert in that. And that's where you want to be. That's the differentiator. What do you have more than others? It's not all about moving freight, man. I don't sell freight. I say it all the time. That's not the main point.
Yeah, you're not trying to sell freight, and that when you get more of that, like that's where you start hitting the gold, right? You start hitting, hey, I got the customers for life. I'm able to have these conversations with people, and kudos to you for always developing yourself, because people think that, hey, I've got to come out here, I got to do 100 calls, I got to do 100 emails, and it's like, well, know what you're doing. Like one thing that I did, Jeff, yesterday was I went through my CRM. And I just deleted contacts that were just wasting my time. And what triggered that for me was that there was a prospect that I was talking through for the whole year yesterday. Sorry, I was talking for the whole year last year, and we did their RFI, and then they came back to us saying, hey, we had over 250 carriers come to us, do the RFI, and you guys are not eligible. So like, this is it wasn't a kick in the pants, but I was like, forget these guys. I don't need them. I don't need to work with these. And I was like, okay, let's go back to the CRM. Let's go back to the basics, and then understand that, hey, and the first call I actually made was to my top client. I went to talk to him. I was like, hey, what do you like about us? What's going on? Give me a little bit of value. And then I shared the story. And then he literally told me, he was like, you know what? It's their loss. And just think about that, right? You get to pick and choose who you want to work with.
Absolutely.
And I think training is so bad. The topic of like specifically training, only time you can only talk about your path, because those are the ways that led us to where we are today. But for me, what helped me and kept me in this industry, to be honest, was that I did operations for a year. I did learn what a truck is, figure out how many space. The funniest thing I think we ever did in our office was like we got a couple skids and trying to figure out, okay, how much space is this going to take in the dry van or on the kick of the step deck and things like that. And I think learning the industry that way, I
Yeah.
always tell my wife that, hey, when I did that interview for my first job, my boss asked me, "Hey, do you want to go into operations or do you want to go to sales?" If I said sales, I wouldn't be here right now with you. I'd probably be somewhere else. But because I'm like trucking, like okay, like who really it is what it is, right? But for me, I think learning operations and things like that. Jeff, what do you've seen a lot on like LinkedIn and like having conversations with people, and I'm sure people reach out to you, especially rookies and things like that. What's lacking in training right now?
I think the lack in training would be the lack of understanding, the lack of empathy when they're reaching out to shippers. They don't have that grasp of what shippers go through. I say that because I say that with my shipper's hat on because I've been in that seat. I say it all the time. I'm not bullshitting you when I say this, but when you're in that seat and you got a multi-million dollar operation and you're pushing 20, 30 million dollars, 50, 100 million dollars, that traffic manager there is extremely busy. They don't have time for themselves. If they don't have time for themselves, how are they going to give you time as a salesperson when you reach out to them? They don't want to hear the same crap day in and day out. They want something that's meaningful, insightful, that's going to drive their interest because they don't have the time. So don't say you have the capacity or you have the best rates out there compared to everybody else. That if service provider A gives you $1,000, I'll do it for 800. No, 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 no,
Get out of
no.
the price game. You win on price, you lose on price. That's kind of like
No,
my
that's why I hate brokers. I have that mentality. That's why I have a different approach to my sales approach because I was in that seat and it irritated the crap out of me. I mean, I'm being dead serious too. And I'm not that transactional broker. I go for big stuff. I don't like the little stuff.
Mhm.
The little stuff is the mom and pops that don't know what they're doing, and you'll just grab here and there. And you have that lack of control. You have 100 customers bringing in X amount of revenue, where you could have three huge customers and you're blowing 100 of those customers away. So you got to have that priority, start focusing on where you should be focused on and drop the bad ones. It's all timing. I did that post before about the 1,000 calls, right? A month, 3,000, 6%. And then it was 0.066% of that are like the qualifiers. And then you get maybe one or two clients out of that, after all that hard work, and you put in all these minutes and 14 days worth, and then all this back work that you're doing into it. I mean, it's time. It's so much time that's involved into it that you want to keep that client for life if you're doing things right and supporting their needs. If you lose them, you just lost a ton of money. You just don't realize it when you dig into the cost factor of it. So I'm passionate about this, as you can tell, but I'm just being.
That's why I wanted to talk. That's why I wanted, like, as like we were talking about before we brought Scott on Tuesday, that hey, I think we should have a theme of the week and just strictly stick to that, and then
Mhm.
have like and have different voices, right? Like we had Scott on Tuesday, we had Dean yesterday talking about markets and different things like that. So shout out to Texas and their cowhides. But no, I agree with you in terms of that because you got to work in a conversation with a friend. He was from home. He's always been in an office, and he's always been like just working in an office, doing sales as well and logistics. And he was saying, what was the biggest adjustment for you? And I think for me, the first little bit is understanding what you actually want to accomplish from working from home. Because I'll be completely true and transparent. I remember like the first couple of weeks and so on, my training lacked because I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to log in. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And then you look at the time and you're like, oh, it's time for lunch. Let's go take an hour lunch and stuff like that. But I could have been using that time to develop my skills, right? Because when you got that out here and he agreed to salesman on the floor, you get that vibe, you get that dopamine drop of like, hey, these guys are making calls. These are what listening to these guys, what they're saying, and exactly, and kind of honing in your own craft as well, especially when you're talking about niche. For me, what I don't like about training is that it's like a one size fit all that I've seen in like corporate structures, especially for like newer guys coming in and things like that. It was like, okay, here's what, do your WMS forms, your login forms, and your first actually teach what, no one's actually, they're kind of leaving that to you to kind of figure out, especially as a new rookie or a newbie. So I think what Scott was kind of talking about was that, hey, they have people who shadow people, figure out what they're doing, and then they come together as one and they just discuss it. How do you like
Yeah.
collaboration when it comes to training, Jeff?
It's very important. And, I was just listening to what you're saying about competition and all of that. Let me be perfectly clear on this for you sales guys and women out there. You have no competition. The only competition you have is yourself. It's you against you, and you are your worst enemy. It doesn't matter what the other people is. It's what you have in here and your goals and objectives and where you see yourself. That's first and foremost. That's going to drive you. If you've got drive and determination and you don't want failure, or you want to learn from failure, please do and do what you need to do. Don't worry about the other guy. It doesn't matter. As far as training is going, your report to should be in the trenches with you, showing you the ropes. The only thing he can't or she can't show you is the logistics side of the business. They're only showing you the sales and what to say and how to say it, when to say it. But I'm telling you, you want to get a good feel and get your finger on that pulse. Get your ass in a warehouse, see the inside of a truck, talk to a truck driver, get that feedback. It's so beneficial. I can't tell you. I've had years and years and years of that. Are you going to learn it just like that? No, but you have to be patient and willing to take that extra step to learn that side of the business. It's going to treat you well. Trust me on this. It definitely will.
Yeah. And I think that that's extremely important. Like, and the one thing in our industry is that there's no cookie cut way, right? There's no, like, you can say, hey, go to a warehouse
No,
and
there's not.
do this thing. There's not. But then I've known, like, we both know people who've never done that, and they're extremely successful by their means and by their goals as well, by having competition against themselves. For me, what I look at when it comes to training is understanding, when you're talking about determination and you have that grit to want to succeed, I feel like you kind of need to paint that picture as well of what does grit and what does clarity kind of look like to you. And then you can actually define what training you actually, because I know that when I first came to the company I'm with now, I met Dan. Starting there, and it was a training session in Mississauga, and that's where we connected, because like what he was training at that time is what I needed at that time, starting at a new company, and understanding there. So I think external training is up to you. So Jeff, let me ask you this then. You got hired at a new place and you've done the training, like let's say you went to the warehouse and all that stuff. External training, who's that up to? Is that up to your boss or is that up to you?
Both. It's up to you to ask those questions and engage in your report to. And ask him or her for follow-ups, weekly follow-ups. Hey, let's have a meeting. What do a lot of them record their phone calls too.
Yes, yeah, we do. Yeah.
When I had a team, they had the little suction cup on the back of it, and they recorded everything that they did, and then they played it back at the time, and then they sat down with their manager, and the manager went over with them. They said, "Did you hear? Did you understand what the shipper was saying here? Let's dig into this a little bit more and define, how you could approach this a little bit better," and so forth and so on. So, yeah, I mean, the engagement is critical for sure. And the more experience that your manager has, the better off you're going to be. If you have a manager that sits in his office and just looks at numbers all day, ain't going to work. It's not going to work. You need a manager that's going to get into the trenches with his troops and do what they do. You know, that's how you're going to build a good team of salespeople, or workers, whatever environment or vertical you're working in. Good managers, good leaders should be in there with their troops and doing the same kind of stuff and
Yeah,
encouraging them, showing where the water is, but not telling them how to drink it.
exactly. One of the big things, I love that you said that, because Jeb said that on the episode that we had. Like, he companies get the list, making calls. He doesn't know the industry, but he'll start making calls. And one of the important things that I like to said is that when I worked a corporate job, we'd have like power hour or power 2 hours, where literally everybody on the floor, even operations, every single person on the floor, they make a call. They make calls for that hour, and then we all come together in the conference room, share our successes, and share things that we can learn on. And and I think that's what's important for I think for training. And I did that outside of logistics. Before logistics, I worked for a telecom company, and I was actually a sales trainer for like newbies coming in as well. And that's what we'd always do. We'd always have those calls, and it's nice, especially when you're making commission and you're making calls that you never kind of do, and you start closing some people on these power hours. You're like, maybe we should do power days, but that's a little too much,
Nowadays,
for a little too much there. But you learn a little bit about yourself, and I think that's what's important.
yes.
Question for you, Jeff. At RGTX Logistics Solutions, have you ever hired like sales representatives to make sales? And if you did, what kind of data did you measure them by?
This is really funny. So on paper, rail logistics was created in 2015. I pulled the trigger formally in 2019. Okay, made $9,000 the first year. But I was steadfast, and I was pretty confident. Except I did a lot of things. I hired a plethora of people on commission basis. Um, they didn't do crap. There was no drive, and I was just saying, you know what? Let me just throw it to the wolves and let them do it, and I'll sit back and watch. Wrong, wrong. I got rid of them all,
Mm,
and I started doing it myself and talking to the people that knew me as a person and develop. I wouldn't say develop, redevelop those relationships, and said, "Help me."
mm,
I'm not a sales guy. All right. Oh, you may say you're not a sales guy, but every time I hear you talk, you sure do sound like one. It's just like, okay, lift me up, give me some of the crap that I really need to hear. Cause I mean, that's typical, right? They try to push you up on the pedestal and let you sit there and dangle for a little bit. And so the next thing you know, they started opening up doors for me, and references and referrals, and my calls went down, my customers went up, my revenue went up, and now I have one of my ex-bosses that I used to report to for 7 years. It's now working for me.
mm,
So I mean, that just didn't happen overnight. That was trial and error for sure, because I had to take my logistics experience and tag that sales side on it to get into the shipper's head. I mean, that's pretty much it, right? And so things are starting to bloom, and building those strategic partnerships, I should say,
mhm,
developing them, giving a little and getting something in return. It's that management of time.
yep,
Time management is critical in this business. And you know I used to use a CRM called Profit way back in the day, and we used to, when we made the phone call, be on a timer, and that would feed into the CRM, and it would tell you how much time you spent on this customer,
yep,
and then you would have the stages of where you are in the sales, all
mhm,
the way up, right? And then if it didn't go, you would see how much time that you wasted in it,
yep,
and the tools and the effort. And then when a client did come on board, Now you had stages in that, right? You did the management side of that, the transportation management side of it. You've gathered the data. You've got the NDA out there. You're now ramping up. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. I won't go through it, and that's all time consuming. And now you start breaking that up. How much revenue am I making? How much commission am I making? How much profit? And how much per hour am I making on this client? And that's how we did that. And then we had that threshold of, okay, here's where we need to be. If we fall below it, we really need to consider whether or not we're going to still be servicing that one. And of course, the ones that are up higher, yeah, we're going to roll with them and put more effort into them. And the medium ones, we have to give a little bit more. But those one falling behind that, out the door they went.
Out the door.
Out the
And I
door.
think like it's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember when I used to work in the office, and somebody closed something. This was a phrase that I've heard so many times, and I'm sure other people have heard it too in the office. Is like, I just closed a whale, man, whale, and then like nothing happens.
Oh, well.
Like they close like the biggest customer of, and then nothing happens. So maybe they sent the wrong rate, or they said something was right. But so having that confidence and able to do those training, and I like that you share those magazines, because I'm gonna ask you for those magazines offline and kind of.
Oh, I got a ton more. I mean,
yeah, and then we'll share that offline. But Jeff, I want to thank you so much. This training episode has been amazing for us. Really quickly, I know you've got something going on today. Tell everybody about what's going on at 4:30 Eastern time today.
Yeah, the relaunch of Hold My Beer. Tune in. It's going to be a great show. It's going to be much different than what it was in the past, and we're going to do a lot of good things. I can say that right now. So tune in to the Hold My Beer channel. We'll be on LinkedIn. We'll be on YouTube, and I don't know what TJ. He's going to add a few more channels to that. But yeah, tune in. It would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll be there, man.
Bring your beer. Bring your beer.
I was just gonna say, like, I'm gonna make sure that none of the craft stuff, none of the IPA stuff, bring the good stuff. So I want to thank everybody for coming out this morning, just on the YouTube, Facebook, and and LinkedIn. There we go. I forgot LinkedIn at the end there. We'll be on for Friday wins and lessons tomorrow. Keeping it casual. We'll do it like training edition, just like we've been doing for the past couple of weeks. But it's been a lot of fun this first week, and I know a lot of people are getting value. Shout out to Scott for being on for Tuesday, Dean yesterday, and shout out to Drew in the comments this morning. So with that being said, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Have yourself an amazing day. Make the calls, do the emails, do the work today, right? Let's go.
Let's go. See ya.